Everybody find your seat. We're gonna get started. Questions. Thanks for everybody. Thanks everybody for coming. Everybody online too. We even got Chris Percy online. No, that's what he's talking. We got Cedar Rapids, Quad City, St. Peter, and Cedar Valley. Anybody new to the breakfast? Anybody? Mr. Chapman? You want to stand up and introduce yourself? So I can embarrass you.
Josh Chapman, you can't.
Josh came to Vegas, so we got to know a little bit there. Anybody else do? No, everybody's been here before. All right. I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors. We have Cinch, Max Insurance. And anybody wants to say anything at the rep in there, please let me know. Motto. Of course, we have the Real Estate Service Center, Creative Concepts School, and Max Property Management. Breakfast happening, sponsors pay for the breakfast, all that stuff. For those of you who don't know, Lance Hanson is our principal broker. I say that for people that are online that maybe never met Lance. He's been in the industry nearly 40 years. He is Realtor of the Year, right? Of course, Michelle Kelley, who's been our Director of Education for some time now, too. The good years just keep flying by, so I don't know how long it's been, but you know, Lance and Michelle have been working really, really hard. They know this is coming or had an idea this is coming. He's been working on this since 2019. He's in a position as brokerage and us to make sure we're ahead of the game. I think we are in a lot of senses. So without further ado, Lance Hanson and Michelle Kelley.
I know. Just a couple of things to note. Because we are online, we need to make sure that we stay quiet in the gallery because otherwise that cuts off what they can hear online completely. So let's keep that to a minimum. You'll see that there are some little green pieces of paper and pens. If you have questions as we go through, please write your questions down. We're going to wait and handle all the questions at the end because we may answer the question before we get to the end, and that'll just kind of keep everything together. If you run out of paper, just kind of raise your hand, plug down Madison. She'll get you another little sheet. And then as you have questions, just kind of raise it up and Madison will grab those for you. I think that's what we got.
That's it.
I think you get to start.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi, all of you online. Appreciate you coming in and stuff. Before we actually get started, I want to recognize that April is Fair Housing Month. In our world, of course, all year is fair housing, but we kind of highlighted a little bit. So there's some things on the screen that you can say about your first-time home buyer. One's 35 years old. We got married couples, 19 single females, 10% single males, because we don't run our money very well, so the females beat us in that. And then unmarried couples, 70% didn't have a child under the age of 18 in their home. By 14 by multi-generational homes, so it's like you're going to live there forever. But I think everybody in the world has had one of those where like I'm never moving, and then 5 years later you put it on the market, you know. But the discrepancy here is the thing that we need to continue to work on and be aware of and do everything we can. Where 81% buyers are white or Caucasian, 7% Hispanic Latino, 7 Black and African American, 6 Asian Pacific Islander, and some other, you know, identified with some other race. So it's like, you know, there's 88 heterosexual, 3% identified as gay or lesbian, bisexual and prefer to self-describe, and 6% prefer not to answer. That's just information for you to have in your mind all the time. We need to do everything we can when we're working. It needs to be top of mind when we're talking to people, to make sure that when we're presenting, when we're sitting in front of somebody, specifically buyers, that's kind of what this is about, that everything you do is exactly the same every time. That way, when you have a planned presentation, when you sit down with people, then that makes sure that you don't make mistakes, that your past and your history and your mindsets and that doesn't come into play, because it all happens to all of us. So have a full presentation, do the same thing every time. That stuff will be good. So anyway, today we're here to talk about all the big changes coming, you know? The reality is there are some changes. It will change our business a little bit. It'll change the way we do business quite a bit. So here, first, what I want you to do is like, we've had talk about lawsuits. Get that all out of your head. The lawsuits will not affect us. You know, Remax early on settled. It's a nationwide settlement. We're protected as a company. Don't worry about the lawsuits. The things that are going to change are the agreements in the lawsuits, the settlements. In those, they added rule changes. The last one, which was NAR settlement, which raised all the stuff. By the way, while I'm talking about that, so you understand, because everybody's like, why didn't NAR get in front of this? Why didn't NAR get in front of this? You know, all these news outlets, you know, the 6% is over. This is never going to be the same. Nobody has to pay a dime. It's all free, right? Here's the deal. When they went through the settlement and they were settling that morning, somebody in our wonderful Justice Department decided that they would leak it to the New York Times. The New York Times took what they wanted to take, made up a story about it, literally made up a story about it, and ran it. And the story said 6% is gone. NAR slashed commissions. All of you know here, NAR's never charged a commission. Okay, NAR can't slash commissions. So just so you know, it wasn't NAR that didn't get in front of it. It was somebody in the background leaking, and they took every chance they could to make us look bad. And so now we're playing catch up, and NAR is playing catch up. We're all playing catch up. It's just the way it is. The bottom line is there are a couple of rule changes we're going to talk about. The bottom line, though, is that business is going to stay business. You know, the buyers are not going to run away. The sellers are not going to run away. People still need our help, and we're the best in the business. Remax overall is the best in the business. Remax Concepts, I guarantee you, is the best in the business. We're the most informed, the most prepared, ready to go. Whatever changes there are, we're ahead of it. And you know, thank Michelle for a lot of that. We're ahead of this game. So just forget about the lawsuits. Doesn't matter. We're going to teach you in classes how to answer questions about, you know, when the listing, the seller is like, well, I don't have to pay buyer's commission anymore. Those things that come up, we have answers to all those. We understand how it works. You know, we'll talk about that a little bit today. So the rule changes. By the way, NAR settled for $418 million. I think the other three that settled, it ends up being $230 million or something like that. And when people talk about like the postcards are going out, everybody heard like there's postcards being mailed to all the neighborhoods about how they can get all this money. Well, if anybody else has been involved in like Verizon had one, Best Buy had one, and you know, you end up getting $1.50 or something, you know. They're estimating that if the class that gets covered signed up, they would get somewhere between $10 and $50. That's it. Okay. What they're going to do, and when people call and go, shoot, I might as well get my $50, right? Say that's fine, and I understand it. And I you know, $50 is $50. But understand what you're doing by saying yes is you're joining a class of people who say they were cheated. Do you actually feel like you were cheated? Because is $50 really worth it to slam the realtor organization, to slam the person who left it, to slam the person who fought for you, negotiated for you, helped you with your financing, found the right property, took it all the way to closing, and then got you a gift and thought and thanked you for working with them? Is $50 worth that? Because I don't think it is. And I think people don't understand. They think they're going to get like $1,000, $1,500, and I guarantee it's not happening. The only winners are the attorneys that brought this. And that's why all the copycat lawsuits. In fact, the biggest copycat lawsuit is the attorney who did the first lawsuit. And then what he did is went out and got everybody else. So the settlement is just that. It's to shut the door, move forward, move on. It's not that we did anything wrong. In fact, I guarantee you we didn't do anything wrong. But the perception of our industry is such that we were vulnerable. And because we drug our feet, we didn't change a lot of the rules that we could have changed and probably should have. So let's go over the rule changes. So the probably the one that's going to be hardest to deal with is that we now can't put a blanket unilateral commission from the seller into the MLS system. It's blocked. We can't do that anymore. So rest assured, we're finding out what do the rules allow. How can we do that? We know for sure that we can on a website put everything that's offered, if it's offered, on all of our listings. We know that every company can do that. We can't post anybody else's listing and how much they're going to get it. So far, we don't have a repository of that information that would be available. We've asked about showing time. I thought that would be a great spot. What we're being told is that showing time, because it's part of the MLS system, that we're not allowed to go there. But rest assured, there's smarter people than me that are working on how to make that so that we have the ability. I mean, like for some of us that have been around forever, we picked up the phone and called them every time anyway, because we had to call personally for showings. We had to, you always had to do that. So we'll figure it out. That will get figured out. We'll figure out how to be able to do that. Because the bottom line is we need to know that, not to decide whether or not we're going to show a property, because that's not something that we have control of. We've made from the very beginning, we've made the promise to everybody we work with as a buyer, when we make them a client, we promise all fiduciary responsibility. We promise to put their interests ahead of anybody, including us and our company. We can't say, I don't want to show it to you because I don't get paid. But when the buyer is paying that, we have to tell them so they can decide as a buyer, how hard is it going to be? What's going to happen there? So that's the thing with the MLS. The other thing is that we are about to become the 19th state in the nation. 19th. So we're not like leading the charge here. The 19th state in the nation to require buyer representation agreements. This isn't new. This isn't brand new. We've always had them. We've had the form for as long as I've been around. There's been this, So it's not like this new thing. It's now just that it's going to be required. A little discrepancy is that when the IR started putting this together about making this a law, they put it that you would have to have it signed prior to writing an offer. And it, like the agency, it's kind of like talk about it ahead of time, sign it sometime before. But then when NAR settled, the way NAR settled was that it had to be presented and shown and signed prior to showing a property. That's going to be a pain in the butt. Okay, I mean, it just is. Let's face it. That's going to be a pain. So we've got to figure out how that's going to work. That might get negotiated a little bit, but the bottom line is we're going to have something prior to showing the property. We've got some forms that we're working on that would help out kind of along the one-time showing agreement that we have, blah, 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 or 1 day, So we're working on that, trying to get ahead of that part to make sure that we're covered as a brokerage. And then we're working really hard at many different levels, but there's, quote, a rule, and we've all had it drilled into our head forever, that you can't negotiate commission in a purchase agreement. Okay, you can't negotiate commission and purchase agreement. We've been told that for years and years. The problem is that's not actually completely true. And the way the law is written doesn't prevent the form that we're using, which Michelle will go over, that allows the buyer to ask for it. But in the meantime, in the background, what's going on right now is that they're working really hard because the rule is a 193, which means that it comes from the commission and it's an administrative rule that's been around since sub-agency in the 1900s. I love saying 1900s. I was born in the 1900s.
Say last century.
Last century.
Yeah,
There you
last
go.
century is
Yeah.
even more dramatic.
Yes. I'm an old guy. I was born in the
Since last
1900s.
century.
You know, so anyway, they're working hard with the commission to make it so that that gets changed. This, when we started working on the purchase agreements and trying to figure things out, what we realized is there's tons of purchase agreements in other states. There's tons of purchase agreements that have commission right inside the purchase agreement. They discuss it right inside the purchase agreement. And so I'm predicting that even maybe before July and the rules going in, that may very well just change. And so it opens the door. We're open about it. We can talk about it. We can negotiate it. And so, you know, those things will make a difference. So Michelle's going to come up and talk about forms and do some stuff. But one last thing. This has always been a rule. Always. The last time this rule was updated was 2002, and it's in your code of ethics. And what is it, 711, something like that, 711. Anyway, the rule states that it is your responsibility to ask a buyer prior to signing anything with that buyer if they have a contractual agreement with any other agent. That's the rule. It's been in ethics forever. It's not a change, but listen, you now really have to ask. You have to make sure. It is our responsibility to make sure that they tell you no. In fact, even in our form, it says they don't. But make sure you do that. That's your ethic. You're bound to that ethically. And it just creates a huge problem. If that's not the case, it creates a big problem because you end up with, you know, somebody who's got this agreement and contract with the buyer. And then next thing you know, somebody goes to an open house and they really love it. And then the person in the open house is, you know, signing you up, going to write an offer and stuff like that. Now we have a serious dilemma. Okay. Because we actually have two different, or we have a violation on the person who's successful in writing the offer. They didn't ask. So it's a problem. We need to make sure we're aware of that. We need to be better. Okay. By the way, I don't know if we talked about, yeah, you talked about questions to write them down like that.
Yeah.
And in the back. Michelle Kelley.
So I know you guys are super excited to have new and different forms, right? I get to be the bearer of bad news. We've actually got about 11 forms that need to be either updated or new forms. I know that seems like super overwhelming. Some of them are just a little bit of change as to the verbiage, which takes into account the new the newness that we have to have as far as having that buyer representation agreement. So we're looking at changes to the listing agreement. We know that the first conversations that we need to have are with sellers, right? Because now they're hearing, you know, all the headlines say sellers don't have to pay, sellers don't have to pay. Not true. So sellers are able to still offer compensation directly. The compensation can also be offered through the listing brokerage, or it could be negotiated, or maybe they're not going to offer it at all. So the listing agreement needs to reflect that, just to make it very, very clear. Because clarity is the number one thing that we're looking for. So seller appointed agency therefore needs to be updated because of exclusive. And I think we've got seller appointed agency and buyer appointed agency already ready to go. So those are very close in dot loop. The seller estimate of proceeds, making sure that we separate out how that's getting paid. the listing brokerage, the selling brokerage, if any. And then it comes to the EBA, and that's what you have that we handed out or that you grabbed when you came in. And you can still use the one pager that we have right now. I'm really sorry to tell you this ended up being a 3-pager. Lance said that was my fault. It was not.
The 5 you were promising a month ago.
Yeah, it was not a 5-pager like what came from the state. So we did get it down to 3 pages, and there's a lot of stuff in it. So some basic things. The first question at the very beginning, does the buyer have a business relationship with another broker? So that's just another reminder that we have to ask the question, and it makes that buyer actually attest to it because they're going to have to sign off on that. We put some definitions in there, and then we put in stuff that you do. So all of the services, not all of the services, but services that you promise to provide, and in turn, things that the buyer is attesting that they will also do. The appointment is still there. So it's an affirmation of the appointment of the buyer's agent. You still have to use the appointed agency agreement. They cover 2 different things, so we still have to do that. In the agency relationships, what I wanted to point out, some of you may be unaware of a term called contemporaneous offers. Because what happens is, we've had it in the past where you've got a buyer, you've got 2 different buyers you're working with, they're looking at the same house. And it's always been okay that you can write offers for both of them. Well, now we've got a different responsibility under this exclusive brokerage agreement. So what happens is you have to have them both agree. It's kind of like dual agency at that point. Because how can you represent one buyer exclusively and still represent another buyer exclusively? So there's a new form called a contemporaneous offer form. Our friends in the Quad Cities have used it for a very long time, so it's nothing familiar to our Quad Cities friends. But it will be a little bit new for us here in this market. I'm not sure if Florida uses that or not.
One of the things about Florida is Florida has kind of done basically what we're talking about for quite some time. So we have a great benefit that we can lean into Florida and talk with them. How are you doing this? How are you doing that? So Florida, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
It's always a good help to be in different markets that bring a greater awareness and understanding to the market. So then we get down into the compensation area, and you'll see that we have it so that you can charge a percentage or you can charge a flat fee. Remember, this is your business. This is your business model. You get to decide what those numbers are. You get to negotiate those for yourself. Then it splits out the brokerage admin fee, because that's that separate fee. And then for those of you who have charged an additional fee, that goes right underneath that agent processing fee. So if you really have to kind of look at your business model, if you want to go ahead and continue with that additional admin fee in addition to a percentage, or do you just want to do a percentage? So maybe instead of 3, you want to charge 3.25 and not worry about that additional admin fee. Really go through your business model and decide what works for you, because all of this has to have so much clarity and disclosure for the buyers so that they completely understand where that money is going. So that's all up to you, how you want to do that. We do have a note in there for VA loans, because you do know that a veteran using that veteran loan cannot pay. They can't pay you as their buyer's agent. So that does have to be negotiated through the seller. Other things to note in this, we did put a term in here. So of course you have to have a beginning and an end. The amount of time that you do, again, is up to you. We've heard some will do it as long as a year. I think that's way too long when you're working with a buyer, but that's a time frame that you get to decide. We put a 30-day clause in there. So a 30-day termination where either party, you or the buyer, can say, this isn't working out. I'm going to give you a 30-day notice. So 30 days kind of gives you enough time. So if they found it for sale by owner, they're probably not going to wait 30 days to go ahead and purchase it. But it also gives you an out as well. So we tried to balance that a little bit. So that termination is kind of like the protection clause on a listing, where you expired or canceled the listing and then you have to turn over all of the names of the potential buyers. This works the same way, only it's the properties that you have exposed them to. So you have to turn those over in order to use that clause. Now, we did put in something that sounded a little controversial at the beginning. And again, Quad Cities does this. I'm not sure about Florida if they do it as well. But in the event that buyer signs another exclusive agreement with another agent, any claim that you have to them is done. Because here's the deal, y'all. Who's going to sue them? Are you going to go sue them? Probably not. So let's just make it really clear, make it easy. You don't have to track people down, and then you can just move on with the contract. It does have property type desired. That was one of the things that we saw in the legislation, that it needed to have property type. Make it general, because you may have someone who's looking at commercial with somebody else, and they're looking at residential with you. Or they may be looking for, a lake house with somebody else, and they're looking for a residence with you. So keep it fairly broad, but do put something in there. That way you can always come back to it as well. You've got a price point, 500,000, and then now you want to look at $1 million homes. Like, well, we're probably not going to do that. And you can refer back to that. You can always amend it. Let's see. The other thing is we did add a fair housing line in there as well, to make, just as a reminder from the Fair Housing Act. All right. If you have questions, write them down. So some other forms that we have, and a couple other forms, or did you want to jump in with anything from the EDA?
I'll get there.
You'll get there? Okay. All right. So with that, we have so buyer appointed agency will be updated. Dual agency, of course, will also be updated. We'll have the new contemporaneous offers form. And then we're also looking at doing a buyer's estimate of cost. We do that for sellers. Why would we not do that for buyers? That way it just lays it out. It makes it very clear. You'll probably need to talk with their lender a little bit, or they may want to submit that to their lender just to make sure that all their numbers are good. And then another new form would be the exclusive buyer representation change agreement. Just like a listing change form, this would be an exclusive buyer representation change form. So if you change what you've negotiated with that buyer, you can put it right on that form. If you extend that contract, you can put it there. If you cancel it, it can go there as well. And then the last form that I just want to mention, and I don't know that we'll have any changes on that one, is that buyer request for buyer broker compensation addendum. So if your buyer is requesting that the seller pay for your services, please use that form. It has verbiage that works. And if you try to put it in there differently, you may be having a challenge with that. So we've had legal go over it, and it appears that it should work very, very well in that situation, especially once we've got some changing legislation.
What's that form called?
That is the buyer request for buyer broker compensation addenda, and that's currently in .list. All right. You wanted to mention in the EBA.
One of the things inside the EBA is that one of the NAR settlements in the fine print discussion is that when you negotiate a contract with a buyer, and it's like the total amount, you've got three options. You've got your percentage, you have what we charge as a brokerage, and then any additional that you want to charge, whether it's processing or it's whatever fees for the extra services that you do. That's all available. But then there's that total amount, okay, that you come up with. The NAR settlement makes it very clear that you cannot get more than that. Flat out. Just because they're going to do this, and then the seller's offering this, and And so you can't get more than this. Now, let's say you've got you're doing a DR Horton home and they're offering the additional. You're gonna have to either amend the agreement that you have with your buyer. You're gonna have to write a specific disclosure that says they are okay with you taking more money than is owed. Okay, we have a contract for services. We get paid for doing that. We don't get extra because somebody else is offering them. Without clear disclosure from the buyer with you that says we understand there's more. We're trying to make sure that the wording is in because the rules talk very clearly about both disclosure and agreement with both buyer and seller when there is commission coming from different places. So if you have the seller is paying so much, the buyer is paying so much, that all has to be disclosed. And we're working on the law, and the rules are a little bit erroneous on how that's actually done. But we will make sure that disclosures that we have will cover you and make sure you're okay. Okay. And then the other thing that's covered that I want to talk to people about, there's been a whole bunch of stuff about, okay, well, the buyers are just going to go to the listing agent and have them write up the offer. Okay, that just sounds so easy. It's like, okay, no problem. The problem is that as soon as you start to do client services, whether you've got anything signed or not, as soon as you do a client service, they are now your client. It's the way it is. So as soon as you do that, you gain twice the responsibility, twice the liability when you do that. So if you're not getting paid, you're being silly. Okay. If you're like, well, I'm just doing this for my listing because, you know, I'm that kind of person. No, you know, you have to take care of yourself. Make sure that what you're doing is, number one, full disclosure, everything's good, all that kind of stuff. Because as soon as you touch that form, you become a dual agent. As soon as you do anything with it, you become a dual agent. When you hand that buyer our form as a brokerage, we gain liability because now it's all the terms that are inside of that form that they're working with. So just understand there's no freebie. There's no freebie to like, well, I'm just doing this for my seller because I'm a good listing agent. That sounds wonderful, and you know, bless you for wanting to take care of them. But understand that you and me have a lot of liability the second you do that. So if you're not getting paid, that's a waste of time. If somebody's like, I'm not paying any commissions, I just want to write an offer. So well, get an attorney. Write it up yourself. I don't care. Then you get unrepresented buyer. You have nothing to do with them. You can barely do ministerial services for them. And there's a real fine line when you go from ministerial to representation. So you just got to be really careful because that's not a solution to the issue. There are many other solutions to how buyers' commissions can be paid. Tons of them. You got all kinds of different ways. So you just need to know about that. You want me to go into the seller and then the buyer, those things?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's some conversations that you're going to end up having. Number one, when you're talking with your seller, and the seller's like, well, I saw in the news, I don't have to pay any commissions. It's like, no, actually, you've never had to pay a commission. There's never been the responsibility to pay a specific commission to somebody else. It's always been negotiable. But we've worked really hard. I mean, let's be honest, we've worked really hard to keep that number up. And we think, it's self-serving. And if you look at it from one angle, it seems very self-serving. But here's the bottom line. When you shrink the amount of money you're paying out to the buyer side, you shrink your buyer pool. It shrinks automatically. The second you say, I'm not paying anything, you've just eliminated USDA and VA. Come on. Not a chance of that happening because they can't. pay the fees. Okay. The other part is you say, I'm not paying anything. You just lost basically your whole first time home buyer market because they're saving up every dime they can to try to get in there. And like, you're like, well, you're going to have to pay this commission too. So how far does your seller want to shrink their buyer pool? I mean, is their house that good? Is it priced that wonderful? Have you reduced it enough to make it so inviting that somebody will go like, I don't care, I'm buying it no matter what? Because that's what we're doing. We're shrinking it down to that. And it makes it harder and harder and harder to sell. Am I right?
We've
So,
already dropped it
uh-huh.
$2,000 and now we're offering a buy rate.
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
that is an example.
Tasha ran that gamut and she ran it for all of us. So I want to thank Tasha because she
You're welcome.
No, she did that. And it got called by people, including a few people in our brokerage, certainly nobody here, but called to scream and yell at her about how poor an agent she was because she couldn't get commission and all this, because she actually listened to her seller and did what her seller said. She got beat up by everybody, even brokers from another brokerage call. So she ran through this, and if you want to know some scenarios and fun stuff, call Tasha. She'll be glad to share that with you. She did wonderfully at our last class. So just understand when you're talking with them, it's not about incentivizing the agent. We don't need any incentivization. We have to show the property if you want to see it. We have to show it to you. That's bottom line. That's what we do. That's what we promise. But what we have to make sure now, when we have a contract with that buyer for a certain amount of commission that's coming, it is our duty, our fiduciary duty, to tell them, just so you know, we're going to look at these 4 houses. 2 of them have offered enough to pay all of my costs, all of the costs that we've negotiated. One of them, it's going to leave a little gap. Maybe it's going to be 1%, and one of them is said they're not offering anything at all. How do you want to handle it? It's the buyer's decision. Buyer's decision. Because they might say, you know what, that one that's offered nothing, yeah, but I don't even want, I don't like it that much. The buyer gets to say, all right? So that's how that works. So that's how you deal with the seller. Just talk with them, make sure they understand the decisions are, and we've always done that when we're working with clients. We talk to them about the decisions they're making. We inform them of the pitfalls. We inform them, and then they get to make a decision. It's not a change. We've always done that for buyers and sellers. That's our job. Inform, answer questions, make sure they're aware of it. If we know of a pitfall or a situation, we inform them of that, and then they get to make decisions. This was the one thing I told buyers and sellers when I worked with them: I will do anything for you, anything, except make a decision. That's not in our purview. We don't get to do that. That's not what we do. As soon as you do, then you're part of the transaction, for crying out loud. We can't be. We can't be. The other part of that is that we need to, as much as we care about our clients, the sellers and the buyers and their best friends and their this and that, or their 3rd-time buyers or sellers or whatever it is, we love them. They're friends. They don't hire you to be a friend. Ever. That's not what you're here for. They hire you for your expertise. If a scenario comes up, I hear all the time agents call, it's like, we decided to do this and then this person's doing that. I'm like, who's we? Who's we? If you're part of the decision, you're doing it wrong. Just doing it wrong. It can't be we. It's got to be them. They made a decision, not we. You can't be a friend. You have to be a representative. You have to be an advocate. You have to be a negotiator for those people. You can be friends afterwards. Do your job first. Okay? Sorry, I get on my soapbox. So anyway, as Michelle said earlier, as far as buyers, there's three different things. The seller may, and we'll figure out a way to communicate, they may continue to say, you know what, I don't care. Anybody that brings me a buyer and we negotiate a transaction, I'm gonna give them this much. Done. Promise, gonna give them this much. That's called the blanket unilateral. The other part is the seller may say, you know what, I'm willing to negotiate. And maybe they say, I'm willing to negotiate up to a certain level. And then it comes in, it's like, okay, how good are you? How good are you for your buyers? If you're not good at negotiating, you better get good. There's never been a more important time to be a negotiator than right now. Read a book, take a class, I don't care. But you better learn how to negotiate, because this is negotiating with the buyer to get the contract put together. This is negotiating in an offer to not only get the good price, but get the costs included so your buyer can actually buy the property and close. You've got to negotiate. So get good at it. Go to class. I mean, there's amazing stuff out there. Never split the difference. Just take that one as a good start. Never split the difference. You know, that's not negotiating, that's selling. Just so you know. And then the other part is it may be that the buyer's a cash buyer and they're like, fine, negotiate like hell, I'll pay you when we're done. Okay.
Okay, so Madison's gonna come around and pick up any questions that you have. I do want to put in a plug for our presenting exclusive buyer representation class. We're coming around to Quad Cities on the 10th, which is that next week already? Oh, okay, Quad Cities on the 10th, and then Cedar Valley in the morning of the 11th, Cedar Rapids the afternoon of the 11th. Here, I think the one that we have on the 18th may be full, but we've got another one on the calendar for a couple weeks after that as well. So we're gonna grab our questions. Okay, apparently Matt's gonna start with his question. Yeah, so we need to kind of bring it back down because they can't hear us.
I have a USB right now.
You guys, we've got to bring it down or they can't hear us online. I think Matt's gonna start with his questions.
Speak out.
Bonus commissions, if you are getting what you're charging on your EPA, and let's say seller's offering bonus with the builder or something, can you amend your EPA for transparency?
You can amend the EBA, make sure that, because that's full disclosure, you can either amend that, and is that on the change? I think there's a.
Yes, on the change form.
On the change form.
To make it easy.
We've given you the ability to do that. Whatever it is, fully disclosed, signed off by you and the buyer. Okay.
The EPA agreement, this is 30 days for canceling.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Matt, can you speak up a little bit back here?
If you find a buyer you don't want to work with anymore as an agent, let's say you want to fire the client.
Yeah.
You still have to give that 30 days.
30 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then does if you are a listing agent, the buyer wants to represent themselves, giving them the forms to do that, purchase agreements, seller's disclosures and whatever, is that rise to the level of agency?
Yes, it involves the company when you do forms and that kind of stuff. It brings out, because now you're putting the words out that is the brokerage words and the both brokerage forms. So we have to be really careful with that. Seller's disclosure, no, you certainly can give them a copy of the seller's disclosure because that's part of the law. They need to have that.
So even if you have the Iowa Bar Association form, it wasn't ours to give out, should you do that?
You can tell them, like, you know what, go on the Iowa Bar and get a form there. If you want, just fill it out yourself, fine, let's do it. Or you want the
Okay,
question without
right,
writing it
down.
No, it's related to that.
Okay.
So related to your question, so the question is, if you have a buyer that wants to represent themselves and they've got an EBA, you've got an EBA signed with them, right? But they're like, well, I can't afford the commission. I want to represent myself. Isn't like, we've already.
You have an EBA with them?
Wasn't that your
No.
example?
No, I was thinking that every now and then you have a client you just don't want to work with anymore. And if you have an EBA with them, and you just stop working with them, no, you have to.
30 days.
No, but
The
the
30 days.
question about the buyer who wants to represent themselves.
Yes, that's without an EBA.
Oh.
If you have one in,
That was just, if you're a listing agent and they're not offering commission, or whatever,
Oh,
and a buyer
gotcha.
wants to represent themselves, if
Okay,
you give them the purchase agreement blank, that is, to fill out themselves. and hand
You
out.
can tell them just like, just like, what about schools? How are they in the area? Here, go online and here's the spot for you to look. It's the same thing with forms. Go online, get a purchase agreement, get whatever you want, and you submit it. And then you make sure they're signing unrepresented, and you then have no possibility of working with them. No, you cannot. You can't. Okay,
All right, just reiterate, when will the co-op not be shown on listings?
right now it's supposed to be the middle of July.
Okay, easy enough. They're looking for more clarity on commission when builder is offering additional bonus commission.
Yes, the same thing, if it's bonus commission, if it's a bonus, if it's a trip to Hawaii, anything over and above the contractual amount you have with the buyer, anything over and above has to be disclosed, and they have to agree that you can have it.
So if the buyer says, no, you can't have it, where does the money go?
It either, if they're offering it, you either negotiate it back into the transaction to try to get costs reduced for them, or you get them closing costs or whatever. You try to negotiate it back in the transaction for them. Otherwise the seller gets it.
Okay,
But what's,
I don't know. That just made my head spin.
no,
That's okay.
if, let's say that there's scenarios where the guy's like, I'll give, if you write an offer by this date, it's an extra $1,000. Okay. And you talk with the buyer and they're like, hey, they're talking about an extra 1,000 for the buyer's agent. The buyer's like, yeah, I'm already paying you. And you think about it, you put the hat on or take the hat off and become a buyer and think about that. Like, wait a minute. You negotiated with me to pay all of this commission to you. And now there's some money in the transaction and you want it. Why? What did you do? Are you that good? Did you? I mean, I know, Matt, you are. But you got to think about that. It's like, maybe it's like, you know what? I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, hey, don't pay that bonus. Let's have an extra $1,000 closing cost. Let's have the price reduced by $1,000. Let's have something like that. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our buyers.
Okay, so
We have it.
so help the buyer benefit.
Yes, get the
So
buyer
that's- Okay,
benefit.
that's good. Okay.
And it's a whole nother discussion with DR because the buyer doesn't benefit if you don't take the money.
Right.
So that's a whole different.
That's the most common though, I would say. It's new construction, they can, because you go to their events, they give you.
Yeah, and if it's DR board and you know that, tell them ahead of time and you have to make sure they understand there is no benefit to the buyer if that doesn't get paid to you. None. Okay, no benefit available to the buyer. So that they go, well, shoot, if they're gonna pay money, okay, sounds good. And someday we'll be able to rebate buyer commissions back to the buyer. Someday that'll come. That's another change happening down the road. And we'll be able to say, yeah, I'll take it. I'm gonna hook you up.
It's already happening, a lot of investors.
I know, but I'm talking about, I'm the rules guy.
Right.
So,
All right. Does a listing agent have to disclose what compensation the seller is offering when asked?
yes, I mean,
It's
you
required.
can't lie. I suppose if if they say, well, they're willing to negotiate, that could be an answer. So you don't have to give away a bargaining position on a seller. But if it's a blanket unilateral, yes, of course you do. Just like you do now.
Yes. Let's go to open houses. How do we handle buyers who come through? Is that considered a showing and require a representation agreement, or is it an exclusion?
No, it's an exclusion from that. And have open houses if you're looking for people. Have open houses because I think they're going to go up. Michelle's the first one said that's got to happen. They're going to be like, shoot, I want to go see houses, and I don't want to like sign anything with somebody. So they'll take a Sunday, like the old days. Remember the old days? You used to go out and they'd see 5, 6, 7 open houses, and check them all out and that kind of stuff. And then work at it. Just be aware that your relationship to those people has to be limited, just like it is in open houses now. If you start asking questions that are specific, then you start getting representation. All right, so don't ask the questions, just what's going on, how you doing, that kind of stuff. How long you been looking at blah, 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 first time out.
We,
Huh?
and we just put an open house class on the calendar as well, and it's available virtually for our friends who are not here in the metro. And we're gonna have a panel of agents who do open houses really well, so you can hear the different ways that they do it. So we've already got that on the calendar. Don't ask me the date, I don't remember. All right, and we can pick and choose between a percentage flat fee on a case-by-case basis. Are there any thoughts about backlash of doing it that way?
Providers, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Whatever you negotiate, I mean, we've never, as a brokerage, we've never, ever told you what to do. And I know there's some out there that like, this is what your buyers is gonna be, this is what your seller is gonna be. You can't vary from that. Now, a brokerage can do that. And the negotiation part is, do you want to work with me or not? That's your negotiation. But we've not done that. We've left the ball in your court so you can work that. So, whatever the situation bears, I mean, I don't think it's a good business model to be the lowest priced. Let's just say that.
Okay, I think this one came from Florida. I currently put on my listing agreement that I give a break in commission if I sell it myself. So do you see that if a buyer comes in that you may discount for the buyer or the seller?
It certainly may be. It's called the variable rate commission. There's a box you need to check on our listing agreements here. If you offer that, it has to be, if you have an agreement, it has to be declared to the agents out there that you in fact will take less money. So your offer, if you write it, is better. So it levels the playing field. You can make sure they understand that they bring in a buyer, they're going to have to do better because you're going to discount if you do that.
And that might be different too, without having commission on there, what that's going to look like on the MLS, I would think as well.
Isn't it going to be fun? I'm so excited about this.
We're working our way through some of it. One of these is, are there any changes before July?
No. July 1st would be the earliest change. I would encourage you not to wait for the change before you change, but that's up to you. The forms will be out and ready to go. And I'm encouraging everybody that start using the exclusive buyers agency now and the new one as soon as we get it out. Start doing that and using that, because if you really screw it up, you still got a chance to get paid at this point. So it's a good learning service.
Use the buyer's agency also in this?
Yes. Yeah, buyer's agency is required, just like seller's agency is required prior to signing the listing. Buyer's agency is required prior to signing the exclusive.
Should we have it as permissible to, is it donate from the desired property type? Or deviate from the desired property? Should we have it as permissible to deviate from the desired property?
When we're talking property type, I just say, on mine, I would just say residential. Way big, open, I'd say if it's going to be residential, just residential. Then it's I'm sorry.
Should say like primary.
You could, whatever you want to do, but I'd make it as broad as possible. But we have to, because it's a contract, we have to have some parameters to it.
If they're open to acreages, but also open to in town and just haven't quite decided,
Residential.
then we can just say residential and
Residential.
acreage. Sure. Can we say more than one type?
Residential and acreage are the same thing.
Okay.
If you're gonna live there, So, yeah, that kind of thing. While we're talking about that, one thought is the way it's set up and written, these are like one time, and then when you close on the property, the EVA is extinguished, okay? If you're working with an investor and they're buying multiple properties, just add that to there so that it doesn't extinguish at the first closing.
What if they use multiple agents though? Investors use multiple agents. So how
Well,
does that
they're
work?
gonna have to make some decisions.
Okay.
They may come to you and say, you better cross that exclusive crap out. I'll use you if you bring me something. So listen, just like any form that we have out there, you can cross out, you can add to, you just can't gloss over. You can't white out. Same thing.
Okay, here's a good one. What if they're under contract but don't want to be anymore with somebody else?
It's the same thing as a listing agent. You got to tell them, I can't work with you as long as you're under contract, that, you know, until that contract goes away, I can't work with you. Then shut the hell up after that. Don't tell them how. Stop it. Don't tell them how. You have to go to your person. You have to tell them they need to. Don't do that. That now you're becoming an attorney. Don't do that. All
What
right.
if the buyer lies to you? So they contact you for the listing.
Then the buyer-
And they lie. Where is my proof that I asked the questions?
Inside your EBA.
But because they're not my buyers, they came to me, I'm the listing agent.
Yes.
They came to me and said, hey, by the way, who are you working with?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not working with anybody.
Yeah.
Because they know.
But here's the deal. If they come to you, they're not working with anybody, okay? Then they have to sign that agreement before they can work with you. Inside that agreement, it says, I'm not working with anybody. So now you have it in writing. And so they, just like a listing, you may owe 2 commissions. If you try to deviate and mess up with the law, you may own 2 commissions. So, you know,
What if they just absolutely decline to sign that document?
you can't show them.
Oh,
That'll be law.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot. Now, if we get all into the weeds a little bit on that, there's the opportunity to cross out exclusive and be non-exclusive and blah, blah, blah. So you can do that. We as a brokerage are not going to be non-exclusive. There are situations where we might have to look at that, but generally as a brokerage, ours will be exclusive.
Do we see the VA loan requirements or USDA requirements changing?
Yes. Right now, NAR and other folks are meeting with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, VA, USDA. They're working with them, trying to get something figured out to change the basis. We probably, at this point, I'd say we probably have our best chance with VA, because VA wants their people taken care of. Okay, so I think there's some way of making that happen. The others with Fannie and Freddie and Ginnie Mae, those are all governmental secondary market lenders, so they're going to be a pain in the butt to deal with. But I think overall, when you put in front of them, here is your sane government, Department of Justice, saying we have to do this, you guys got to make some changes to allow us to follow the rules. You have to. Otherwise, it's just a dichotomy of like complete bull crap. You know, it has to be figured out.
All right.
It's okay.
Can we negotiate for our commission using the broker to broker instead of the buyer asking as part of the purchase agreement for VA and USDA buyers?
Broker to broker, the best thing is to do the buyer request. If you do broker to broker and you're inside of the same MLS, you stand a chance of trying to ask the listing agent to change the listing agreement. So I'd be real shy about that. Use broker to brokers usually like outside of your MLS with a different MLS, because there's no blanket unilateral. A bunch of this will start morphing and changing as it goes on, and we'll just figure it out as we go. We're going to figure it out as we go. The only thing I can assure you is that we will figure it out for you.
That was my question. And the reason I asked was I was trying to find a way that the VA and the buyers could still get help.
Buyer request for broker. Buyer request. The buyer is asking the seller to pay the commission directly. They are not paying it.
Okay.
Okay? The buyer request will work for USDA, it will work for VA, it will work. As long as, like in the VA and USDA, they can't pay any, okay? So the whole amount has to come from the seller.
Okay, Is opening a door as a listing agent or like a sign call on a property as a listing agent the same as a showing for a buyer?
Oh, we're getting out in the weeds
Yeah,
here.
we are getting.
Yeah.
We're working.
Yeah, I know. But you can open the door, but can you keep your mouth shut? I guess that's what I'll say. I'm guessing basically in this room, though.
It's not wrong. All right, so is everybody or the major brokerages in Metro adopting exclusive buyer agency only?
I believe so. All the ones that I've talked to, I've been, there's a group of us that are talking back and forth with Century 21 and with KW. Done a little bit of Caldwell, not much. Iowa doesn't want to talk about it. But yeah, I think the majority, the state form is exclusive. Just so you know, the state form is an exclusive representation form. So
Isn't it against the law? Don't they have to comply?
they have to comply with a representation agreement, not an exclusive representation. So yeah, you can do non-exclusive.
All right, once a seller shares what commission the seller will pay to the buyer's agent, how will we hold the seller and listing agent accountable to that percentage?
Well, we're working on the listing agreement for just that. Where the 3 slots, where it's like blanket unilateral, you say you're gonna pay that, period. Then there will be, I'll negotiate up to whatever on there, or I'm not paying it. You just can't help.
Can we create a compensation agreement document that's just compensation? Like, wouldn't that be easier? Because then you could attach, like, you could send it to agents that are showing that says, like, that section of.
That
the
may be
listing agreement.
that may be something we do later,
Okay,
but it has to be signed by the seller,
sure,
and the listing agreement is going to be that document.
right. But then it also needs to maybe be signed by the buyer that they understand this, right? So just like a seller's disclosure, seller's disclosing this, buyer has to agree to this, right?
Yeah,
Same thing.
Yeah, purchase
Sellers.
agreement, that's what
Okay.
that's gonna be.
All right.
Okay.
Will agents or brokers advertise not paying buyers agents to get more listings and market share on listing side? And can they offer not charging buyers? We've got Next Gen already that's been doing it for years. I mean, that's a business model.
I mean, I guess, it's certainly, I mean, I, like I said, somebody can offer whatever they want. They're just gonna adjust their buyer pool accordingly. If you got the most amazing listing in the world, it's priced right and it's perfect and it's in that price range, it's in all that stuff. Somebody probably figured out a way to buy the damn thing. Did you get 1 out of 4 or 5? Did you get one that sold with the buyer paying everything? No.
The seller ended up paying it.
Okay.
5-3. One, the seller ended up paying it. Second one, we reduced 20,000 and are now offering a buyer agent commission as well.
Yeah.
The other one is still.
Okay, so
Are these all the same sellers?
So,
no.
all right. All right. Can you talk about how we'll make sure buyers paying our commission won't mess up their pre-approvals?
That's also in discussion. Is like how that's going to be viewed. There's going to be a cost to close. If they're paying your commission, that's a cost to close. If that can screw up their ratios.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's gonna be there. We have to be able to figure that out. We've got lenders that we're talking with and working with. We were blessed in our last class to have 7 lenders sitting in the back hearing all of this so they can do what they can to help us and explain. And Chuck did a great job of explaining the rules specifically to that point. If you have something you want to say to that point, I mean, we've got an amazing loan officer here, or loan officer or something. So both of you are awesome.
The biggest challenges I see right now until things do get fixed, VA is going to be a big one.
Yeah.
But right now, and kind of what we talked about at that last class is from a seller perspective, if you price a home for them, if you show them that a home is worth $400,000,
yeah,
okay, and they decide not to pay the buyer side commission, they're not going to lower that price to say, okay, now that I don't have to pay that commission, we can sell it for less. They're still going to want that $400,000. So anything that the buyer has to pay now will have to go on top of that. if they're trying to put that into the price. So if they're trying to negotiate 3% into the price, that $400,000 house is now $412,000. So you might have an appraisal issue at that point. You also have an issue where with seller paying costs, it's not just closing costs anymore. That 3% or 6% is going to have to include for now that commission plus closing costs. So that's where it gets a little tricky. It can mess with the pre-approval. And like you were saying with VA, flat out, that buyer can't pay that at all. So the more, if it is that the seller is going to agree to pay it, it's business as usual. There's no differences. It's where they don't, that they have to understand, not only is it going to, lower that buyer pool, it's going to make it much more complicated for those buyers and may accidentally, unintended consequences, kick some of them out. So, and that's where whatever lender you're working with, talk with them ahead of time if you know that's the case, just to figure out how that's going to work. Or if they don't have a lender, I mean, if there's just general questions, give us a call and we're happy to work through that with you guys. So,
Okay. Follow it that we have here talks about appraisers and appraisals. Here's the deal. The appraisers right now are going no mas. They're like totally saying, which is really weird because they always ask us about closing costs.
Yeah.
And they want to throw that in there and all this other kind of bull crap. But then when the rubber meets the road and there's a little pressure on them, they're like, oh no, market value is market value. It's like, oh, you're full of crap. But no, it's true. They're not doing what they should be doing, which is being aware of the situation and having some follow-up on
And the
that.
true market.
So
The
true market. So it's morphing. I think some appraisers are going to be a little better at understanding it. But yeah, the reality, I think you were saying it is like the value of property is not going to be lowered by the sellers of said property. It's not going to happen. They're going to be like, well, the one next door sold. And you're going to go, well, yeah, but they included buyer's commission. Well, I don't care. The market's the market. So that's where if the market is the market, use the buyer's request, take it to the seller to pay, and you go around the whole thing, boom, done.
It's gonna be harder to do CMAs too.
Well, there's going to be some competition in there. I think at this point, when people are saying I'm not paying it, and you start, we have the availability still to be able to see commissions paid, so we can show that, hey, out of the last 5 that have sold that are just like yours in your area, they all paid 3. So are you saying you're negotiable up to 3% on lowering of the price? So you're not paying this? Because I don't know how to justify not paying the commission and still asking for market. Now, the reality is, like I said, with appraisers, they're going to be like, well, we'll just look at the last ones. So we'll see. We'll see how it rolls around. Yes.
How do you suggest agents who work with online leads communicate to the potential clients about the EBA and then maybe the one-time buyer form?
Yeah.
One-time buyer.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit weird when you get the call on, you're listening to him sitting in front of the house, maybe can you come out and show it to me? I'd suggest not doing that anyway. Generally speaking, that's a very unsafe practice to work with. But the idea is like, hey, you know what? I know you want to see the house. If nothing else, let's meet at the McDonald's or the Starbucks or whatever that's just down the road. Have a little visit. Let's talk about this a little bit and get an idea of what's going on and explain to them, because everybody's going to be in the same boat. You get it? And this isn't like you're doing this and nobody else is. The law is going to say you got to have it signed. So if that's what the law says, everybody's going to be doing the same thing. So you just need to be really good at explaining to them, getting to know them a little bit. We are, like I said earlier, I'm going to lose my voice. We are, like I said earlier, we're working on maybe a non-representative one-time showing, something that makes it a little bit easier for you. So we're examining other states that have done this and some of their forms and what they've done to help in this scenario.
You mean a non-exclusive one-time showing?
Yes.
You said non-representative.
Oh, okay. Non-exclusive.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, if a buyer signs an EBA, can another agent show them houses open doors for them? Say the agent is out of town and pays someone to help.
We can do an additional appointed agent, yes. But it has to be in writing. It has to be an additional appointed agent that is filling that role. And you better figure out how you're gonna get paid. Okay,
Since we can't put commission on the MLS, could we just put the entire listing agreement in the attachments?
that's still on the MLS, just so you know.
Oh, and this goes back to what happens when a buyer has two EBAs signed? Who pays?
The court gets to decide that one. It's two contracts signed. So if the buyer, if the buyer's that dumb, they owe it. If the agents didn't explain it well enough, shame on you. Right? I mean, that's why you're all here, right? That's why you're here.
Is the EBA form a binding contract?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this says EBA agency. So agency is a different form. That is not a contract for service.
The EBA is the exclusive buyer's agreement. Okay, it's a contract, just like the listing contract. It's signed, it's done, has to happen.
All right. How does this fit in with fair housing? Doesn't this lead to unrepresented buyers?
It could, and that would be an absolute shame. And hopefully there won't be much of that. That's why we're working so hard at having this different forms and ways of working and helping people. Because yes, the decision that's being made by the Department of Justice and the settlement is absolutely affecting fair housing. There's no question. Because the people who are least likely to afford it, the most important to wanting to buy a home, those people are going to be adversely affected.
Yes.
The people who have generational wealth and stuff like that, they go, you know what, screw it, I'll just pay cash for it. I'll refinance it later or something. So yes, it is absolutely going to affect fair housing. And we as a group, specifically RE/MAX Concepts as a group, should focus and work really hard. That's what we're doing to get you the right forms so that you can take care of anybody who comes to you as a buyer. If they are getting their tax refund, which gives them enough money, if they get enough closing costs to be able to buy the house FHA. We all been there, done that. We still need to be able to service those people. So pay attention. That's what this is about. Pay attention because we have the way to be able to do it. We just need to do it the right way.
Oh.
Oh.
Can brokers or agents file a lien on purchase agreement or the other new contract to secure payments, or do a contract on a contract like insurance industry to secure the CCP?
Whoa.
Yeah, you better ask an attorney.
Yeah, talk to an attorney.
You're above my head on that. There's no way I'm speaking to that. That's crazy.
Ooh. If buyers get to closing and they say they don't have the money to pay, what do?
Don't close.
They don't have closing costs to pay. They don't close. All right.
Would we have known that before closing?
Well, you should.
We should.
That would be preferable.
Okay. I think we've answered both of these.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go. Stick your hands up. Come on. Come on. Come on. I know. Yes, sir.
Do we see lenders finally making it so that buyer's commission is financeable and we can put it on the
Somewhere, yes. Somewhere down the road, that's a possibility. We just have to get the rules in the back.
So I just want to clarify. So one of mine was earlier. So mine was the question on charging like a percentage or flat fee. So let's say like you're a buyer's agent and you make an exception on one to the other. Are we concerned about backlash from that? If we have the ability to run our own business, let's say we got to get a deal put together. So we amend our exclusive agency to do a flat fee one time instead of a percentage to get the deal done. Are we concerned? Like what happens when a minority gets charged something different on a one-time
yeah.
basis than?
Yeah. I mean, you should always be aware of what's going on. And
Right.
it's like you're giving your friend a discount, that kind of stuff, and then
Right.
somebody else you don't. So yeah, there's all of those factors. that you have to have, yes.
But couldn't you protect yourself that way as long as you can show all your EVAs show the same percentage on all of them? Because at that point, it becomes a part of the negotiation of a contract.
Probably, yeah.
So
Just
as
ask
long as
yourself why
this
you're
form
doing it.
always says the same thing, if you were taken to court.
Right.
Yeah, okay, hang on.
There's a question I wrote down. Didn't ask. So I have a VA buyer and I have the EVA signed by them, but there's nothing in it that says like how the buyer would be protected if the seller is not willing to pay commission,
does.
right? Oh, it does say
Yeah.
that. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
it says in the VA part, it says
Okay,
that
perfect.
notwithstanding
Got it right.
this agreement,
Okay.
a VA buyer is not responsible to pay commission based on this agreement
Got it.
if it isn't come from somebody else.
Okay, got it. Thank
So
you.
years ago, I had a seller who couldn't afford the commission, but we had to sell our house. And so we had an attorney draw up a promissory note and she paid the brokers monthly until she could pay off the entire commission.
Yes,
Is that something that could be?
that's always been an option. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do a promissory note if you really need to. I mean, the reality is that lots of people are not as wonderful as that person was and who appreciated your service and paid the amount. A lot of them be like, okay, take me to court. So be aware of who, but they're in the back.
We were talking just briefly.
Okay.
Nice and loud.
We were talking briefly earlier, is that loud enough? Just about how, you know, when you're comparing with buyers, this person did pay a buyer's commission, this person paid full commission. How are we gonna know that if that's not on the MLS?
Like when doing CMAs
Yeah.
after the fact, like.
That's true. That will go away. Our ability to understand that will probably go away unless we figure out some kind of repository of information. They have done everything they can to block that so that it's not, it is not a general, like, okay, all of us are going to go on one website and put it all on there because they say all you're doing is create a different MLS. So yeah, we won't have that ability for our sellers down the road.
So when looking at comps, when you're doing a market analysis, that's a big variable.
It
that's
is,
gonna
it
differ
is,
that we won't
it
even
is,
know.
yeah. So we'll see, we'll see.
Can we ask a buyer's agent to send us their EVA and have the pre-approval letter reflect any additional charges? Otherwise, how are we gonna know what to present to our seller about what the
Well,
buyer can do?
Yeah, we don't send our listing contract out, so I
No?
wouldn't think so. I mean, there's gotta be some trust in the business. Somebody's not lying to you. So you can ask the questions, but I don't think you can ask for a specific form.
I've got a question online here.
Oh.
Legally, can we put a commission for the buyer's agent on the listing agreement?
On the
Yeah.
listing agreement,
Yes.
yes, that's an internal document, just not on the MLS. It can't be reflected, yes.
Okay, following up on, if I'm the buyer's agent and I ask the listing agent what the commission shared with me will be, and they like text it to me, and then later they change their mind. Like, how do we get that in writing, like some sort of formality?
Purchase agreement.
Okay, but what if they change their mind before we even write a purchase agreement? Like, because on the MLS, it was always listed there and you can't
Right.
change it.
Yeah, one of the questions that you ask, is this a blanket unilateral or is this a negotiated fee?
If it's negotiated, it needs to be as part of the purchase agreement, because it's like with anything, seller will provide X with, acceptable offer. So it'll be a negotiating term like that.
And if you're gonna get anybody to send you, like, would you send that to me? Have them send it to you in an email, because that's more legal than text. Oh,
So I know in Florida.
Okay, we can't hear it all.
In Florida, they do basically transactional. They get people coming in all the time. They go from agency to transactional. Are we gonna see that? And are we gonna, if we run into that, basically, we're still just gonna tell them, be unrepresentative, go write your offer. We're not gonna be a transactional situation.
right, I don't see, we would have to have a lot of laws changed in the state to become transactional. So Florida and Colorado are transactional base. I think, Shane, you can speak to that. But I believe Florida and Colorado are transactional, and so this affects them differently. But we don't have that possibility at this point.
Those running in, because we do dual a lot. And so basically tell them if they don't want that, just do their unrepresented.
Or find an agent. Yeah, I mean, if they want to find a buyer's agent, maybe you could recommend somebody to them.
Are you guys not recommending dual?
Huh?
Are you guys not recommending dual? as
No,
much?
we don't have anything to say about dual at this
That's
point.
fine.
Dual, I mean, if you do dual, at this point is fine. Somewhere in the future, it'll get questioned. Yes, sir.
What are like the acceptable ways to advertise compensation then? Like, is agent
Anywhere
marks
that's not the
acceptable?
MLS.
Is agent marks unacceptable?
Yes,
On the
that's the
other
MLS.
So if I make a post, I could say, hey, like offering 3% buyer's agent compensation on like a Facebook post.
Yeah, you can do, yeah, any other place. You can you can say in a listing, like in the listing in either agent remarks or public remarks, you can say buyer broker protected. You can say buyer broker fee negotiable, you know, that stuff. You just can't make a blanket unilateral statement in the MLS, period.
What was like and there's probably a reason for this, but like, I've seen in posts people saying like, isn't that making it transparent that it is on the MLS transparent?
Yes.
So I guess why would it not be there?
Because we have the Department of Justice, with the Consumer Federation Agency, we have the, you know, all those people who think we're pieces of crap. And then all we do is, you know, go out here and lie to people to make money and that we don't do our job. These people are dumb enough to believe that being a buyer's agent is less important than being a listing agent, that you don't have to have as much knowledge. You know, they're just dumb, you know, and I
It
guess.
seems like it's less transparent to put it on Facebook post.
No, it is. But I mean, it's like Ron White says, you can't fix stupid. Unfortunately, we're dealing with people who want to make rules who don't understand the process.
Let's do our last question for today. We've got,
Oh, my question.
Nope. okay, then we'll do this. Okay. Oh, this will be the last question and I'll encourage all of you to come to class for the rest of this. On an offer, can we put under additional terms, seller to pay the buyer's agent commission?
No, you can't do that because then you are asking them to change the listing side. It has to be the buyer requesting. The buyer has to request. Hear me out. The buyer has to request. If the agent is involved in the request, you're screwing up. You're breaking the rules. Okay?
That was the
Right
last
now.
question.
It's just like.
Yeah, right now, the buyer can request the seller to pay their contracted amount or the difference in their contracted amount.
Where?
I'm sorry?
In the purchase agreement. On that addendum.
We have an addendum.
Buyer request for buyer broker compensation.
We have an addendum.
Yeah. Buyer request for
Just
buyer
type in
broker
buyer request.
compensation. Yeah.
It's buyer request.
All right. All right.
Thank you. Yay.